Greetings. In this video, I'd like to compare the Ge'ez word TewaHedo, which means unification and is used by Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, Oriental Orthodox Christians, to refer to the union of the human and the divine within Christ's single nature, to the Arabic word TawHeed, which Orthodox Muslims will sometimes try to tell people means a indivisible, unipersonal monotheism. And in this comparison, I'm going to seek to show just how similar these two words are. In fact, I'm going to posit that the two words are essentially equivalent, which is to say that the word TewaHedo is essentially the Ge'ez equivalent of the Arabic word Tawheed. Quick note, relevant, which is going to be relevant in a moment, it needs to be noted that the Ge'ez script moves from left to right, while the Arabic script moves from right to left, and you'll see why that's relevant shortly. Now, because these two words are written in two different scripts, it may be difficult initially to see just how similar they are. So what I'm going to do to highlight their similarities is I'm going to transcribe each word into the old South Arabian script. For those who don't know, the Ge'ez script actually evolved out of an older Arabic script, which predated the current Arabic script. So here is the word TewaHedo written in the South Arabic script or South Arabian script, and you should be able to see the similarities between the two right away. And here's the word Tawheed written in that same South Arabian script. Now, here is where it's important to point out or remember that the Ge'ez script is written from left to right, while the Arabic script is written from right to left, because the two transcriptions that you see are very close to one another, but they're moving in opposite directions. So to highlight their similarities even more, I'm now going to color code the individual corresponding characters. In the first character, the Ge'ez Tewe corresponds to the Arabic Ta. In the second character, the Ge'ez We, or vocalized here Wa, corresponds to the Arabic Wa. In the third character, the Ge'ez Heit corresponds to the Arabic Ha. Now, at this point, the Arabic word Tawheed has a character which does not appear in the Ge'ez word TewaHedo, so I'm going to mark that character, the Ya, in gray. The fourth and final character that the two words have in common, marked here in purple, the Ge'ez Dant, vocalized here Do, corresponds to the Arabic Dal. Now, at this point, I hope that it's clear that these two words, the Ge'ez word TewaHedo and the Arabic word Tawheed, are essentially identical. However, I can anticipate that some folks, especially those who are outside of an Arabic paradigm, will object that these two words can't possibly be identical because TewaHedo refers to unification, while you may have heard that Tawheed strictly refers to something akin to a indivisible, unipersonal monotheism. So with that in mind, I'd like to take a closer look at how the word Tawheed is used in Arabic. Take a look at its semantic range beyond the limitations that are placed on it by Orthodox Muslims. And so to begin that process, I'd like to turn to this UN document, this official UN document, which is in Arabic. For those who don't know, Arabic is one of the 6 official languages of the United Nations. And so there are many documents in Arabic. However, this one was a document from the Syrian government, so from an Arab state, which was sent to the Security Council and the General Assembly. Now, the reason why it's important to note that it was sent from an Arab state, from the Syrian Arab Republic, is because this is not a document which was translated into Arabic. Rather, it was originally written in Arabic. And I'll share a link to this document in the video description. And what I wanted to focus on in this document is the fact that the word Tawheed appears twice therein. The first instance at the top of your screen reads Tawheed Juhuduha, which means the unification of its efforts, referring to the efforts of the international community. And then the second instance reads Tawheed al-Juhud, which means roughly the same thing. It means unification of the efforts. The Syrian Arab government was calling on other member states within the United Nations, within the international community, to collectively unify their efforts, to have a common front on the issue of concern. But as far as this video is concerned, what's of interest here is the fact that the word Tawheed was chosen to refer to that process of unification. For another example, I'd now like to turn to Wikipedia's Arabic page for German reunification, when the two Germanys, which were split during the Cold War, reunified into a single Germany. Now, notice that German reunification is referred to as إعادة توحيد ألمانيا, which literally means a return to unification of Germany. And notice that the word Tawheed is right there in the title. The word Tawheed is used to refer to the unification of the two Germanys, of East and West Germany. However, if I were to anticipate another objection, I would guess it would be that the word Tawheed is related to the word Ahad, which some allege means uniquely one, indivisible, and they would probably note that that's the word which appears in the first verse of the 112th chapter of the Quran, that being Surat al-Ikhlas, and you can see that word here. However, much as was the case with the word Tawheed, I would argue that here too an artificial limitation is being placed on this Arabic word, ahad. I reject the claim that it cannot possibly refer to some sort of a union. In fact, the corresponding word ahad is employed by Ethiopian Orthodox Christians when they recite their version of the Basmala. You know, when they say in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, one God, they use the word ahad. When they say one God, they say ahadu amlak. Here, listen to this.
በስመ አብ ወወልድ ወመንፈስ ቅዱስ አሐዱ አምላክ አሜን.
Now, the part that I want you to focus on is the part where he says one God, ahadu amlak. So I'm going to play that a couple more times, and I want you to focus on the word ahadu.
አሐዱ አምላክ
አሐዱ አምላክ አሐዱ.
The Ge'ez word ahadu is identical to the Arabic word ahad. It's the same word, ahad, in both cases. As was done earlier in the video with the words TewaHedo and TawHeed, to show how these words are identical, I'm going to transcribe both of them into the previously used South Arabian script. When you see these two words transcribed into the same single script, you should see that they're identical, save for the fact that, again, as was mentioned previously, the Ge'ez script is written from left to right, while the Arabic script is written from right to left. And while this might be overkill, we can once again color code the characters to really drive the point home. So the Ge'ez Elf corresponds to the Arabic Alif. Then the remaining two characters we've seen before, the Ge'ez Hayt corresponds to the Arabic Ha, and the Ge'ez Dant corresponds to the Arabic Dal. So I hope it would be clear now that the Ge'ez Ahad, or Ahadu in this vocalization, is identical to the Arabic Ahad. And I'll add further that both are identical to the biblical Hebrew word Ehad, which I'll put on the screen at the bottom right in both the Ashuri and Phoenician or Paleo-Hebrew scripts. At this point, certain anti-Trinitarian polemicists might say, well, the word echad actually appears in Deuteronomy 6:4, and it definitely cannot refer to a multi-personal conception of God. It refers to an indivisible union. So with that in mind, I'd like to actually take a look at another verse where that word appears. So I'm going to turn to Genesis, specifically the 11th chapter. Bear with me here. Hold on, I'm almost there. I'm looking for Genesis 11:6. And yeah, here we go. Okay, so as I said, I'm here in the book of Genesis, specifically the 11th chapter, and I'm going to go to the 6th verse, where referring to the people, it says that they are Ehad, one people, one group, one folk, and the word Ehad is used to refer to that group of persons. So we see that the biblical Hebrew word ehad can be used to refer to a group of persons, a multi-personal entity, and we also saw that Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, when they make the sign of the cross and then say one God, ahadu amlak, they are also using the corresponding Ge'ez word ahad to refer to the Trinity, essentially, to one God with a multi-personal ontology. Now, at this point, I imagine some might object along the lines of, I don't care how ahad is used in Ge'ez, I don't care how ehad is used in biblical Hebrew. When the word ahad is used in Arabic, especially in the Quran, it strictly precludes any sort of a union, or much less God having a multi-personal ontology. But I would still disagree, and I'd argue that perhaps ironically, we can see a small reason to disagree with these limitations placed on ahad being found in that same chapter of the Quran, which is Surat al-Ikhlas, the 112th chapter, in the 4th verse, when it declares that nothing is equal to God, it once again uses the word ahad. And I would ask that readers think for a second, what is the semantic range of the word ahad here? It's like, what are the range of things that we can apply it to here? I would propose that it means that I am not equal to God, you are not equal to God, the unified Germany is not equal to God. And if we can agree that that's the scope of the text, then that would mean that here, ahad can also refer to unions. It can even refer to the unified Germany, not directly, but indirectly. Something like that is not outside of the scope of the word in this case. But that's a minor example. To drive the point home a little bit more forcefully, I'd like to step outside of the Quran to Arabic in general, and I'd advise Googling the phrase Ahad al-Qaba'il, which literally means one of the tribes. I've done that, and I've found tens of thousands of hits. Now, in that phrase, Ahad al-Qaba'il, the word ahad is referring to one of several tribes, of a group of tribes, and therefore ahad is being used to refer to a tribe, and it does not mean that that tribe is unipersonal. Therefore, even in Arabic, the word ahad can refer to a union of multiple persons. Now, while this discussion on ahad was a bit of a long segue, the point is that appealing to the Arabic word ahad does not refute the claim that the word tawheed is identical to the Ge'ez word TewaHedo. Both the word tawheed and the word TewaHedo mean unification. And that's been the central point of this video, that the two words are identical. But as part of one final attempt to drive this point home, I'd like to turn to the Arabic Wikipedia entry on Christianity in Ethiopia, al-MaseeHee fi Ethiopia, as you see here. And I'll share a link in the video description as well. And while we're looking at it on the screen now, I'd like to scroll down to the section on the sects of Christianity, which you see here, al-Tawa'if, al-MaseeHee, the sects of Christianity. And you see here they have the section on Orthodoxy, and they get into specifically the TewaHedo Church, and there's that word right there, TewaHedo, the Ge'ez word we've been focusing on in this video. And here's the Arabic translation, because this is the Arabic entry, TawHeed. In the Arabic Wikipedia entry, the church is called Kanisat al-TawHeed al-Orthodoxia al-Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawheed Church. And you can click on that link, and you see it here, this church, the Kanisat al-TawHeed. So I honestly think that really drives the point home and shows that these two words are equivalent. So with that, I'd like to offer a quick summary and then a brief closing thought. First, the Ge'ez word TewaHedo and the Arabic word Tawheed are equivalents. Second, each word can mean unification. Now, I'm not saying Tawheed always has to mean unification, but that is definitely part of its semantic range. And finally, a closing thought, the doctrine of the Trinity would have to be considered a type of Tawheed. In so much of Muslim-Christian dialogue that I see, there's these statements, and not only coming from the Muslims, it's also coming from the Christians, where they'll say things like Trinity versus Tawheed, when really the word Tawheed is not limited to a unipersonal conception of God. Christians who engage in this activity, it's like saying Trinity versus monotheism. You're sort of conceding a word to them which applies to your own faith just as well. You know, just as the doctrine of the Trinity is a form of monotheism, so too it is a form of Tawheed. It's a form of assertion of the oneness of God. And it does so by declaring that God, in some perhaps indescribable sense, is a unity, a unification of three distinct persons. Now, one final closing disclaimer. I already noted at the beginning of the video that when Oriental Orthodox Ethiopian Christians use the phrase TewaHedo, they're referring to a Christological doctrine. They're referring to, I guess you would call it the Miaphysite position, some would call it Monophysite, but nonetheless, it's the non-Chalcedonian position that Christ has a single nature which unites the divine and the human. So therefore, just to be clear, when I say that the word TewaHedo is equivalent to the word Tawheed, and B, both words mean unification, and C, the word Tawheed can refer to the doctrine of the Trinity. The doctrine of the Trinity is a form of Tawheed. That does not mean that I therefore think the word TewaHedo is therefore referring to the Trinity. at least not directly. On that note, I'll close here, and I look forward to any comments others might be willing to share. As always, God bless.